Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am so excited to be making this video and a little bit nervous at the same time. So if you've been following my channel for a long time and you've watched a few of my videos, especially the ones that are around books and talking about books and my favourite books, you will know that I am a huge fan of the Shardlake series by CJ Sansom. If I had to choose my favourite book or my favourite series of books, this would be the book selection, the series that I would choose. I think they're just absolutely fantastic. They are brilliant escapism. The world of Tudor London is just so beautifully portrayed by CJ Sansom. You can tell that he is a historian, the legal kind of side of it, the legal history. It's just absolutely fantastic. I don't need to wax on about the book series anymore because I absolutely love it, and I have talked about this series at length before, so I'll leave iCard links to previous videos where I talk about the Shardlake series. Highly recommend that you go and buy it. If you are kind of interested or you love period dramas and you're kind of looking for the next big period drama that might be coming up, this is one that is quite highly anticipated, is the adaptation of the CJ Sansom novels. And so if you want to get ahead of that before the series starts coming out, I highly recommend you go and buy the books. They start, I've got them all here in order of when they were thinking. You probably can't see it very well. I am going to put pictures up on screen and stuff. But they start with Dissolution, and they got all the way up to Tombland, and they're just absolutely fantastic. So without further ado, this video is going to be a what we know so far video about the adaptation of the Shardlake novels. So it was announced at the very beginning of this year that Disney Plus had bought the rights to do an adaptation of the CJ Sansom Shardlake series. And at the time, the news of an adaptation, especially by Disney, was a mixed reaction for a lot of people. Now, I am that much of a Shardlake nerd that I'm on the Facebook, the official CJ Sansom fan page on Facebook. It's like a group. I don't think it's a page, it's a group. And you can join. I think it's like the CJ Sansom Appreciation Group or something. Oh God, I'm cringing at myself now just thinking about it. Anyway, I'm part of the group. They're a lovely bunch of people. We recommend other historical novels to people and just generally kind of chat on that group. And the reaction on that Facebook group to the news was a mix of, yes, finally we're getting an adaptation, because people have been crying out for it for years. And there's been posts on the Facebook page of who would be your Shardlake, who would be your Jack Barak, you know, and kind of going through all the different characters. And yeah, there's been lots of kind of call for adaptations. The joy at the news of an adaptation was quickly curtailed by the news that it was being done by Disney. So that's not, that sounds awful saying that, it's not to throw any shade on Disney. It's just that there are other networks or other production companies that I think, as super fans of the books, we wanted to see. I mean, the pièce de résistance, the top of the chain, would be HBO to do an adaptation. That would have been chef's kiss. But that hasn't happened. And then I think, you know, it's a difficult one when you have a British, I'm going to come on to this in a minute, when you have an American company or an American production studio doing a British adaptation, because unless you have people on the team that are absolute experts in English history, there's always going to be things that end up being wrong. And I think with CJ Sansom, it's not like you can create a Bridgerton where it's like, it's a fantasy set somewhere within a fantasy Georgian period. This is date specific. And this is if they're deciding to go with the books, which we'll come on to talk about in a minute. It has to be date specific. So the references of Tudor London have to be spot on. There are real historical characters in there like Thomas Cromwell, King Henry VIII, Queen, the different queens. And I say different queens because the books span several of Henry VIII's wives. And yeah, so it has to be spot on. And that is always the concern for me personally, and I know it is for other people in the Facebook group, that an American production company might not necessarily be able to get that historical accuracy absolutely spot on. Now, I have spoken to somebody that I know, a friend of a friend, well, no, he is a friend in a group, in a group of friends that we have, who is, I think he reads scripts and he works with a publisher, but like in script development. And he told me that there is a European or English, I think it might be European, branch of Disney, and they are the ones that are dealing with this adaptation. So it's not necessarily American Disney that's doing it, because one of the biggest concerns with everybody in this group, and one of my biggest concerns, is that Disney has a tendency to glamorize situations. Think of all the Disney adaptations and all that kind of thing. It's all clean and it's very kind of pretty and it's all done on a set. And I think that's one of the major concerns with a show like this, is it really needs to be gritty and it needs to be dirty, because London was gritty and dirty, and the kind of books have a real grit to them, a real kind of sense of being in the dirt of the common person. And Shardlake as a character, he works in the Court of Common Pleas. He very much is a lawyer for the people. He's not I mean, he is very wealthy and he does very well financially for himself. He lives in a beautiful house on Chancery Lane, but he is very much, he's a people's man in a way, if that's the easiest way to kind of say it. And so it needs to be able to kind of really kind of be able to get into the nitty gritty and the dirtiness and the kind of grime and the melee of life that is happening in London at that period. So that is my biggest concern with Disney Plus, to be honest, is that they're not going to be able to really get into that. And I will be devastated if they have one long street in London that they make on a set and that's the only street in London that we see. And I know it's really hard because we can't go back to Tudor London. There are tiny, tiny fragments left of Tudor, Jacobean, Elizabethan London left in England. A lot of it was lost in the Great Fire, and then you had a bombing during World War II. So, and just generally, buildings collapse, buildings need to be rebuilt, and so there's very little remaining. So it's either you go to other places in the world and film in other places of the world that might still look Tudor, Jacobean, Elizabethan, but they're expensive. Or you go down the road of CGI, which I don't know why people go down the road of CGI, because CGI is more expensive than going to a location. Or you build a set. And I think of those three options, my top tier would be going to a location. The next tier down will be CGI, because at least you can pay someone to do historically accurate CGI. And then my last one would be a set, because you can tell. You can always tell when it's a set, no matter how much money you throw at it, you can tell. So yeah, that's a few concerns that I have around the fact that Disney Plus are doing the adaptation. Having said that, I am going to now try and curb those negative expectations. And I've been following along with the kind of releases and the press releases and things that Disney have been putting out. And they have cast some of the roles already. So that's exciting. Who knows what those roles are going to be like, but we're going to jump into them. So we've talked about the fact that they're being adapted. Disney Plus is doing it. We've talked about my kind of reservations. So what I want to do now is tell you what we know so far about the adaptations. So at the end of March this year, Disney released a press release saying that they had cast some of the roles for their upcoming series that they were just calling Shardlake. I nearly did air quotes then, but I stopped myself. So it's interesting that they're going just with the name Shardlake. I think ultimately that's the right decision to make, because the novels are all named after specific things that happen in those novels, as you do. And so the one thread that kind of keeps it all the way through is Shardlake. So I think that's the best thing. It would have to either have had to be that or something completely separate, completely different. And I think this is probably the best thing. It's straight to the point. We know what it is, and that's fine. They are starting with the first book, Dissolution. However, one of the things that I did notice reading this press release is that they are planning to introduce Jack Barak in the first series. So if you know the books, and I'm going to stop right now and say spoiler alert, okay? I am potentially going to be talking about some of the things that happen in the books. So if you've never read the books and you don't want to know, please stop watching now, because I don't want any complaints that I've spoiled anything for you. For those of you who've read the books and are highly anticipating this outcome like me, you will know what happens in the books, and so we can go on to talk about it. Right, you have been warned. So yeah, in the first book, we have Shardlake has an assistant called Mark, who is part of his kind of team, I suppose his legal team, and I think he's his ward as well. Because I think, isn't there something about, it's me trying to remember off the top of my head now. One thing I definitely do want to do before the series comes out is reread again. I mean, I say again, look at the state of that book. It is falling to bits. What I need to do is I need to buy a new set of books before the show comes out. Because once the show comes out, the books are going to become very popular. I just know they are. And so they'll go up in price. So I need to get them soon. I need to get new copies. And before we get some awful photographic covers. I don't like those where it's like, no, major TV adaptation. No, I want one of these. One of these that's got the beautiful texture on it still. Anyway, sorry, I've got hiccups because I'm getting too excited. Anybody else could do that? Get hiccups when they get excited. Right, Charlotte, focus. Yeah, so basically I think in the first one, Mark he's kind of got himself into some hot water, and so he ends up going to Matthew, who hopes he's going to be able to kind of show Mark a way to live like a more respectable life. He's supposed to be training to be a lawyer himself, is Mark, and he's just not made for the life. He's just not serious enough. And so by the end of the book, Mark has run away, and Shardlake is left on his own again. And then Jack Barak comes into it in the second book. But I can see, when I first read that, because it's on the press release that was released at the end of March, that they were going to start with Jack Barak, who had been sent by Thomas Cromwell to work with Shardlake on the case. And I was thinking about this because I was like, how does that work with the storyline? Because that happens actually at the beginning of the second book. Thomas Cromwell sends Barak to work with Shardlake. And I was like, how is this going to work? It's kind of mixing up the stories. And then I realised, I was like, we can't really have Mark. Although having said that, we need Mark, don't we? Because Mark escapes with Alice at the end of book one. So maybe they'll have Mark in a different character. Maybe Mark will be a character, or maybe she'll run off with one of the monks or something like that. But I can see to a certain extent why they've just introduced Barak from the beginning, because it just makes more sense. And I think had CJ Sansom thought of Barak's character from the beginning, he may have put Jack Barak in from book one. I've never read any interviews or seen any interviews that talk about why Barak only came in on book two, but there may have been a reason. It may just have been that he hadn't quite conceived of that character when he wrote the first novel. So like I say, I understand why they've done it. I'm going to be interested to see how they weave in that storyline of the first novel with Barak being there instead of Mark's character. But I think most of the storyline should be okay. And I don't think it will have a huge knock-on effect for the second one, because it's just like they get back on the historical wagon, because the plan is that they're going to do a series for each book. So they are going to go, so they suppose they've got 7 seasons at the moment that they can do. Like I said before, it's unlikely that we're going to get another CJ Sansom novel. Fortunately, CJ Sansom himself is very poorly, and so it's unlikely that we're going to get another novel. We think that Tombland may be the final book in the series. So they've got 7 seasons there to go through. So we come on to casting. What do we know about the cast so far? Now, alongside this press release in March, Disney did announce that certain characters had been cast into the roles and provided headshots. Now, some of these people I don't know. I'm glad that they've picked some lesser known actors, because it's nice for that person to be able to flesh out the role and make it their own. I think they are known actors, and certainly if you've seen them in the shows that they are known for, you will know them quite well, but I haven't seen them in anything, and they're not kind of like major celebrities or major stars. So it's really nice, I think, because it's kind of like you've got a name that will draw in audiences, but not so much that they've been typecast or that you are expecting them to behave or act in a certain way. So who have we got in the roles? Okay, so the role of Shardlake is going to be played by Arthur Hughes. Now, I've never seen Arthur Hughes in anything, but I understand he's had a role in The Innocents, and he was also in the BBC4 radio show The Archers, which is really exciting. And he was also in a show called Then Barbara Met Alan. So it sounds like he's had a lot of kind of experience in different mediums. He's also been a stage actor as well. Screen International named Hughes as one of their stars of tomorrow this year. So it sounds like he's a real up and coming actor, and this could be a really, really good breakout role for him. Now, the other reason why I'm really excited that Arthur Hughes has been chosen for the role, because Arthur Hughes has a disability. He has radial dysplasia in his arm, and because Matthew Shardlake's character has a disability, for me, I thought it was a real opportunity for casting to be able to cast an actor who also has a disability. And I'm not saying that in a way to offend or upset anybody, but I think we need to see more representation for people who live with disabilities in TV shows generally anyway, and especially in a role where the main character in the show has some kind of disability. It seems like a really, for me, it's not a good thing to cast someone who is fully able in that role. There should be the opportunity to be able to find someone who has a disability and cast them in that role. Now, I don't believe that people with disabilities should only be cast into roles where the character has a disability, but I am glad that that opportunity has been kind of taken, and I think that Arthur Hughes is going to do a really good job of showing what it means for a character to have a disability within the scope of the books and the series. I think it would have been really easy for them to just completely wash over that and to make Matthew Shardlake not have a disability. Just for clarity, if anybody again hasn't read the books, he has, so it's scoliosis. Matthew Shardlake has scoliosis. Now, obviously Arthur Hughes doesn't have scoliosis, but I think, like I say, for me, Arthur Hughes has lived experience of living with a disability, and so I feel like he will be able to get into the kind of mindset of Matthew Shardlake, who is navigating his life in Tudor London with a disability and obviously facing discrimination amongst his peers, amongst general people in the public. And like I say, I think it would have been really easy for the script writers and the producers to just be like, let's just get rid of that. That's too difficult for us to do. What do we do with that situation? Let's just pretend that he doesn't have that. There's enough things to make him interesting, and I think that would have been a really big mistake. And so I think it's the right choice to be kind of looking at this whole area of the novel and Shardlake's identity, because it does make up a huge part of Shardlake's identity, does his disability. And so you'd lose a huge amount of who he is as a character if they had gone down that route. But I'm very pleased to see that they haven't. And yeah, I think Arthur Hughes, I'm very excited to see what he brings to the role. He, as an actor, is 30, and so he's very young, and that is quite significant because a lot of people were saying that people like Mark Rylance would make a good Shardlake, which he would, but I feel like Mark Rylance would make a good old Shardlake. That's not to say that Mark Rylance is old, but he's older. Whereas in the books, Shardlake is supposed to be in his early 30s, and which of course was quite later in life in Tudor times. You weren't old by any means, but you weren't as young as what 30 is today. So I'm really glad that again they've cast a young actor in that role, because it's again sticking true to the original source material. So alongside Shardlake we have the character of Jack Barak, and he is one of my favourite characters throughout the books. He's just such a brilliant counter character to Shardlake. Shardlake's very serious, he considers himself a melancholic, and then you've got Jack Barak, who takes life very not seriously, and he's a bit of a Jack the Lad, and he's very kind of like cheeky. He can get things out of people when Shardlake fails and vice versa. They're just a really good like little duo within the series, and he's being played by Anthony Boyle, who was in Masters of Air and Tetris. Again, I've never seen those shows, but I am excited to see this actor take on the role of Jack Barak. I've seen his headshot, of which I've been popping the headshots on screen so you'll be able to see what he looks like, and he is quite close to what I had envisaged in my mind. And I think he's going to be a good Jack Barak. Again, he looks young, which Barak is supposed to be quite a bit younger than Shardlake, although not like a teenager. So again, it's a good age and a good character to have. And I can also already kind of see how their roles, how they as actors will be able to kind of act together. Does that sound weird? I can kind of see them on screen together already in my mind's eye. And I think that they will make a really good character duo within the show. So yeah, I'm excited to see what Jack Barak, how Jack Barak is brought to life as well. And the big name that has been announced, and I am so excited to see this person come onto the screen, is that Thomas Cromwell is going to be played by Sean Bean. Which is ace. I mean, it's a bit silly because Sean Bean is so obviously from Yorkshire. Thomas Cromwell was not from Yorkshire. So it'd be interesting to see what Sean Bean does in terms of the accent, because he's not always known for doing a very good posh boy accent, isn't Shardlake? I mean, if you've seen Snowpiercer, his attempt to do like a posh accent in Snowpiercer is pretty funny. So I think they're either going to just let him have a Yorkshire accent and just slightly bend historical accuracy there, or he's just going to have a standard kind of Queen's English posh accent. I don't think he will try to do an Essex accent. But I think that having a bigger name like Sean Bean as kind of a peripheral character is a really good idea, because I think it brings in people who are going to want to watch Sean Bean in a role, and it kind of adds a little bit more gravitas to the show, because if you can get actors like Sean Bean to agree to be on the show, then generally you know it's going to be, or as lay people watching the shows, we go, oh, it must be a good show, Sean Bean signed up for it. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of how they did it with Harry Potter, really. They cast the three main characters in Harry Potter were unknown actors, and then they cast some really well-known actors, you know, like Maggie Smith, Alan Rickman, around them. And obviously I know that Maggie Smith and Alan Rickman are main characters, but primarily the three main characters are Harry, Ron and Hermione. And so I think it's kind of a similar way that they're going down with this, and I think that's a really good thing to do. And then for other names of characters that they have cast, Abbot Fabian is going to be played by Babu Cisse, Paul Kay is going to be playing Brother Jerome, and Ruby Ashbourne Serkis is going to be playing Alice. Now Alice is, I would say, the only female character, certainly the main female character, as in of the kind of main ensemble cast that I can think of from this book. And so, yeah, really exciting. Again, I don't know any of these names. I've not come across or seen anything that they've been in. I believe that the character Ruby, the character who plays the character Alice, has been in Becoming Elizabeth. Other cast within the show are Peter Firth as Norfolk, Matthew Steer as Goodhap, Brian Vernal as Brother Mortimus, Irfan Shamjay as Brother Guy, David Pearce as Brother Edwig, Miles Barrow as Brother Gabriel, Mike Noble as Bug, and Kimberly Nixon as Joan. Oh, of course, Joan. Now, I forgot that Joan was in this, bless her. Joan is Shardlake's housekeeper. If you're watching this and you don't know who Joan is, then you know. But I'm pretty sure most of you will do. So it's really good that, again, they've kept the character of Joan in there as well. But yeah, if those names mean anything to you, if you've seen anything with them in and you'll have seen the headshots, let me know if you are excited for those characters to be, or those actors to be playing those characters. So we've gone through the kind of the main changes to the plot that we think are happening. We've had a look at the headshots. Would you like to see the first shot of the show that they have released? So in this picture, we can see Arthur Hughes, who is playing Matthew Shardlake, and he is astride a horse in what looks like an outdoor area of Tudor London. I suspect that this is supposed to be a side street, and the very beginning of the Dissolution books start with Matthew Shardlake on his horse going through London, and that might be that this is exactly how the show starts as well, and that might be why they're giving us that image, because it doesn't give anything away about what happens in terms of the storyline. Looking at this again, I am not a costume historian. I've said this a lot. However, it doesn't necessarily on paper immediately look Tudor, and that slightly concerns me. I don't know if men had these kind of torn sleeve capes, and in a bold navy blue colour. I have a feeling that if they wore cloaks at the time, they would have been black. They would have been plain black cloaks in kind of a heavy wool or something like that. Matthew Shardlake as a character tends to wear more sober clothes, because he talks about having to wear a particularly kind of fancy jerkin at one point. I think it's in the third book. He has to go and be part of a retinue that meets the king as the king comes to York, and he has to dress the part, and it's always very kind of it's very noted that he doesn't enjoy dressing up in finery. So it's a bit interesting to see him in a gold kind of jacket, a gold tunic. So yeah, I'm a little bit unsure from that picture. It doesn't immediately put me off. It also doesn't immediately fill me with a lot of excitement, but this is the only image we have at the moment of production. So finally, now you've had a look at the first look picture, I thought we'd just very, very briefly go on to talk about the team who are producing the show. So the show has been written by Stephen Bouchard, who wrote The Last Kingdom, and he also wrote Baghdad Central. I've not seen Baghdad Central. I have seen some of The Last Kingdom. Thought it was very good. From what I understand, the historical accuracy is not good with The Last Kingdom. So that makes me a little bit concerned in terms of being able to get Tudor London correct. However, I'm hoping there are some historical kind of historical consultants that are going to kind of lead in the correct way. And so it says here, the series is executively produced by George Ormond and Mark Pybus for The Forge, Stevie Lee for Runaway Fridge, and Lee Mason for Disney+. Those names mean absolutely nothing to me. I've never really heard of anything that they've done before, but if you're a big movie and TV show buff, you may know those names. And the series is going to be directed by Justin Chadwick, who did The Other Boleyn Girl. So that's interesting, because The Other Boleyn Girl is another book adaptation that was very highly anticipated and overall was a little underwhelming. And when I say a little underwhelming, it was very underwhelming, because basically, and I think that's more to do with the script writing than the direction. I think directorially, is that the word? It was beautiful. It was a very beautiful film, but script-wise, they basically turned a book, which by its very title is about the other Boleyn girl, and made it into a film about Anne Boleyn. So it was really frustrating to see that happen from kind of a lover of that novel. I absolutely love that book. It's been a favourite of mine for a very long time. But I'm keeping a positive mind, and I'm hoping that it's all going to be worth it and it's going to be good. And maybe the things that they didn't quite get right on their previous projects, they're going to correct in this project, and it's going to be fantastic. Let's keep positive and let's see. So I'm going to leave that there. That is pretty much everything that we know from Disney Plus's own press release and from other things that have come out recently. That is what we know. So what do you think? Do you know any more than me? If you know more than me, feel free to put it in the comments. I am always happy to be updated with things. And obviously, this video is coming out in the very beginning of July 2023. So things are going to be revealed and are going to be released as we go along. But this is a video that is kind of very topical right now. It's for people who maybe are big fans of the books but hadn't necessarily known that there was an adaptation coming. And even if you knew something was coming, you may not have kind of seen all of the details of what's expected so far. So that is everything we know. So yes, if you've watched this video this far, thank you very much. Let me know which CJ Sansom book you're most looking forward to being adapted, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the show and also to seeing Dissolution come to life. on our screens. So yeah, I'm going to leave this here. I've talked for a lot, but I've got an awful lot of editing to do now because I filmed this late on in the day. My brain's not working properly. So I hope that I've made sense all the way through that. Thank you again for watching. I will be back next week with another video. I can't remember what's on my schedule to film for next week, but I will be back with another video, and take care. And in the meantime, come into the comments and talk to me about the adaptations and let's have a chat about it. All right, guys, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.